So build a better boulangerie. That's the answer, Philippe Charlez?
Yes, I think that more generally, adaptation to climate is today the poor side of, I would say, global warming. We inject practically 95% of the money in decarbonation and only 5% in adaptation. We know that both are absolutely necessary, but I think that as attenuation is relatively slow, we will discuss after, especially with respect to electrification, which is absolutely necessary but relatively slow. We have absolutely to inject much more money in adaptation. I will give you, for instance, today I saw that the temperature in Bois de Vincennes was 6 degrees lower than in central Paris because it means that concrete, bricks, and bitumen is really the worst things to do with respect to climate. And so vegetalization, for instance, is a great and simple idea, but it takes time. And each time we discover a phenomenon that is now very well known, and unfortunately, there is no sufficient adaptation plan from my point of view.
All right, so before we talk about this electrification, Philippe Charlez, you agree? You have to make partnerships where you can.
I agree with what François was saying. First of all, I think what is quite important is to know that energy transition is not really fossil fuel to electricity. It's fossil fuel usage to electricity usage. So it means that very often we see the transition as a transition from fossil fuel to electricity. But what supports this transition is above all the equipment which use electricity, so electric car, heat pumps, and so on. And this is what is relatively complex because I would say that, unfortunately, electrical usage are less convenient than fossil usage and also more expensive currently. And agree also with François Gémen that the key problem today is that most of the electricity equipment are manufactured in China, and I'm afraid that unfortunately we will not recover the difference between Europe and China. Extremely difficult, depending on the efficiency of China, which has relatively 15 years in advance with respect to Europe.
So how do you bring that money back, Philippe Charlez?
I think that you have really two leverage to encourage and to provoke the electrification. The first one is effectively subsidizing equipment. And the second, and I most encourage that one, is that the price of electricity is much, much lower than the price of oil and gas. Today, the price of oil and gas. It's interesting to know that contrarily that's what we think, the price of oil today is not so expensive. When you applied the inflation from the 60s to now to oil, you arrive to €2 per liter.
Sure.
So it means that oil is not so expensive.
And when you compare with the 1973 oil shock, the price of oil has literally skyrocketed, which is not the case right now.
And so from my point of view, the best leverage, of course I'm liberal, but the best leverage to encourage the electrification is not to fund the equipment, but to lower the price of electricity and to inject. I dream about a kilowatt hour at some things between 10 and 15 cents.
Okay, but let me ask
cents of euro.
Let me ask Stéphane. Do you regulate who gets that electricity, Philippe Charlez?
So first of all, you have to know that, especially in Europe, the electricity consumption has decreased drastically for around 10 years. The consumption of electricity in France in 2025 was the consumption of electricity of 2005. So it means that currently we don't see really the electricity demand increasing in France for three reasons. The electricity of usage is much more slower than we imagined at the beginning. Secondly, the equipment are less demanding of electricity because more efficient. And the third reason is that people, because the price of electricity has strongly increased, are probably more regarding to consuming electricity. You agree that if there is an increase of electricity consumption over the next 10 years, which is not demonstrated because RTE plan to
That's
around,
the grid operator.
Yeah, the grid operator in France plan of around 1% of increase per year, which is not a lot. So it means in 10 years we would recover the 10% which we have lost over the last 10 years, which means that today we produce too much electricity. And so the big question is effectively the data center. The big demand could come from intelligence, artificial intelligence and data center. And also, we hope, from electricity of usage, but it's not demonstrated. So it means that knowing exactly what will be the demand of electricity in 10 years is extremely difficult. And there was a big revision of RTE on consumption by decreasing around by 100 terawatt hours the electricity consumption of 2035.
Okay, so
you need to say what RTE is, because
RTE,
our viewers
the power grid, the French power grid.